let's start this as we start our episodes. Usually, welcome to Away Games, a Chicago Cubs and baseball podcast, hosted by two comedians who love the Cubs but live in New York. Hello, Kevin. How are you doing? How are you feeling? We are recording this. This is 5:43 p.m. Eastern. We have 17 minutes left until the trade deadline happens. A lot has already happened. Not as much involving the Cubs as we thought so far. Things can change and probably will in the next 20 minutes, but where's your head right now?
Yeah, well, my head right now is I think the biggest remaining story in Major League Baseball in general is Willson Contreras, I think, sitting out there in terms of who may or may not be traded. Andy and Happ, I suppose. But as we're sitting here, it's 5:44. Contreras has not been traded. He has 16 minutes to be traded. Otherwise, he's just not. And here are the potential outcomes of that. Contreras gets dealt, the thing we've always thought was going to happen for a long time now. You hope for the best return, whatever, but most of the teams have already made their biggest move, so it feels like the timing maybe isn't the best. And then after that, okay, so let's say he doesn't get moved by the deadline. Then the Cubs are keeping the best catcher in baseball, the heart and soul of the team, yada, yada. That could be good if you spend the rest of this useless year trying to work out an extension, which apparently is not something they've brought up in years, right?
Right.
And then the other, I guess there's two other potential outcomes, is that one, they offer him the qualifying offer at the end of the year, and then he signs somewhere else, which means they recoup a draft pick. Adam, do you know where that draft pick would be if Willson Contreras turns it down?
Second round, I believe, yeah.
It would be after competitive balance round B. It would be between picks 75 and 80, roughly, would be the one pick you're getting.
Well, you'd think you could get more than that for him right now. So as far as I'm concerned, either you trade him in the next 10 minutes and you get a decent haul, or you re-sign him.
If you cannot get something better for him now, this is a place where I must ask Jed Hoyer apologists to come in from the wild and to just have a little bit of sanity about yourself and to understand that this, if you cannot get better than competitive balance, post-competitive balance round B for Willson Contreras, who just started his third All-Star game, is 30 years old, etc., then he fucking blew it. Then you blew it. There's no chance you can tell me that you couldn't have gotten more than that for Willson Contreras in the lead up to this at some point, right? And then very quickly, the final thing, which at this point, do I kind of expect? They don't even offer him the qualifying offer, and he just leaves for free, and they don't get a draft pick. That's what's out there left for Willson. But as you remember last year, I'm sure you were listening to the deadline as it was coming down to the wire last year, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh yes, very, very much so. I remember exactly where I was and how I felt, and it's not a fond memory for me.
No, and you remember getting to about this time in the day and feeling like, wait a second, maybe Chris Bryant is staying?
Yeah, I remember that distinctly, and then finding out at I remember the deadline, I think, was 4:00 last year, and I remember seeing a tweet at like 4:02 that was like, Chris Bryant has been traded to the Giants.
Right. So that's why, there's 14 minutes left in the trade deadline, but there is this there's still a possibility that Willson goes, even if
and Happ. We haven't even talked about Happ.
Ian Happ too.
So let's start with the things that have happened so far that directly impact the Cubs. And Kevin, I will tell you, you're sounding a bit muffly, and I'm not sure if it's like the gain or something like that. We're doing this as we go.
Yeah.
Usually you sound very clear, but for some reason it sounds muffled. But it actually kind of fits the vibe of just like it's all just a big shit show, really. So the two main things the Cubs have done thus far. Something happened yesterday which surprised us a lot, which was that they traded Scott Effross, which was not something that was really on any of our radars. But it seems like the return for him was pretty good. Now, as always, I defer to you in terms of knowledge of prospects, certainly not Yankees prospects that you wouldn't have known other than this deal. But what were your thoughts on that trade?
first, our friend Ken Schultz is checking in the comments here, which is he's checking in the comments to say fire Jed, sell the team. A great call as always. It's Ken's version of get her done, which is a version of getting it done if you did that. Bernie Barron checking in saying thanks for doing this with Madrigal ? Has there been Madrigal news? Feel free to break news to us in the comments too, as we've got Twitter up and
there
stuff.
Actually has been, Kevin. The Madrigal news is that this coming weekend is Nick Madrigal bobblehead day, which would mean that there's officially been more bobbleheads than Nick Madrigal home runs. So that's something to be excited.
There is, if we're not counting spring training, that is correct. But yes, so about the guy that we got for Scott Effross. Scott Effross, 28. 5 years of control left, a genuinely good reliever, which is someone you would want on your team if you were trying to be good, which is obviously not relevant to us as baseball fans in this moment. But he, the guy they dealt him for, Hayden Wesneski, I think, which is a real, that must be a street in Chicago, right?
It would have to be, yes. It definitely is. That's a Polish ass name. I'll say that.
It is a Polish ass name. Happy Kazimierz Pulaski Day to Hayden Wesneski.
As McCaffreys are to the Irish community, so too are Wesneskis to the Polish community.
People always say this, and he is 24 years old, so that's 4 years younger than Effross, who is the Yankees' number 7 prospect. It seems like the Yankees' top 10 is roughly comparable to what the Cubs' top 10 is, so he slots in probably around there, maybe a couple ticks back in the Cubs' top 10. But it seems like he is a starter. He is thought to be he's going to be a starting pitcher. He works from 93 to 98. The 4-seamer gets up as high as 98. 2-seamer sits there around 93, 94, and he has a big sweeping slider. And the most fun thing I saw in the video of him is basically that he runs around the mound like a maniac, a little Scherzer-esque, which is fun, It's not really, it doesn't make you good to do that, but it is fun for me to watch. So yeah, I think in a vacuum, that deal is fine, but also what I hate about it is there's a possibility Wesneski is probably should be getting some appearances at the major league level before the end of the year, but it tells me you're not keeping a piece that was under control to compete next year, is how I feel.
Well, but at the same time, I think that it's always harder to find reliable starters than it is relievers that you can plug in.
Yeah.
And from that perspective, based on some of the stuff that I've read and some of the, I would say, optimistic projections of what this guy can be, if he really will be a number 3 quality starter as soon as next year or fairly soon, then I think you maybe are making the right decision trading Effross when his value is at its highest. And I guess in this case, for the first time maybe ever, credit to the pitch lab for figuring something out, getting someone to the level where they could get that kind of return for him. And also shout out to Ken Schultz for commenting. Hayden Wesneski is the 38th Ward alderman. So, and
he's one of the only good aldermen too. So
I almost voted Hayden Wesneski for comptroller, and then I had second thoughts, and I couldn't go through with it. But
that's all right. Well, it seems like things are looking up for him now, getting a shot at the rotation. But yeah, I mean, this is a good point, and also I'm glad for us to. This is about as close as we get to disagreeing, I think, where it's just like if I'm angrier than you, which is good. I don't want to be fully agreed with all the time. I would prefer it if the people running the Cubs did fully agree with me all the time. But yeah, I mean, you say it's harder to find starting pitching, and boy, no one has proved that like the Chicago Cubs of the modern era in terms of developing it, right? And yeah, as Ken says, can he go 6 innings? I don't know, because it seems like that's been the trouble, right? We've seen Keegan Thompson and Justin Steele start to go kind of deeper lately. But when we say getting a number 3 starter, that sounds great if starters 1 and 2 are very, very good. Because number 3 in a bad rotation is not a number 3 in a good rotation,
That's true, yeah.
So I don't know what he is, but also I do think in terms of just, and I hate talking about it in such a hedge fundy way, but in terms of like aggregating value in your system, yeah, a starter who's 4 years younger than Scott Effross, that is more value, which to me, the optimistic thing is looking forward to possibly flipping some of these prospects in a deal for some actual Major League Baseball talent, which Hayden Wesneski seems like he's going to be, which is great. But
Right, and it
yeah.
also the other big Cubs news is that the Cubs traded David Robertson to the
Mhm.
Philadelphia Phillies in exchange, I believe, for another starter, if I'm not mistaken.
You said
I'll
for
have to
David.
look at, yeah.
You said David Robertson to the Phillies, and also Noah Syndergaard just went to the Phillies. By the way, that's news that just came
Yes.
through for former surprise #1 pick Mickey Moniak, who has a fun name. It's fun to say. That's we've got David Robertson went for Ben Brown, 22 years old, 6'6", throws in the high 90s. He was the 26th ranked prospect in the Phillies system, which sounds like jack shit, but I think this actually, I'll say, is fine for what this is. He throws 94 to 97. He's a big boy who throws hard. Slider at 84 to 87. Those are his 2+ pitches, and he's got a very high strikeout rate at a high A right now, and a low walk rate. So those are things I love.
Yeah, and you're trading half a year of a closer who's been very good. The thing that's really going to confuse me as we're now coming up on 5 minutes left until the deadline.
Yeah.
And I now see that Jed Hoyer is officially trending on Twitter. Is that
is it for good
trade
reasons?
Who the hell knows? But you got it. You have to trade Mychal Givens, right?
You absolutely have to trade Mychal Givens. And honestly, I don't know how you don't trade Drew Smyly, too. So obviously, Wade Miley is someone who the Cubs, that was a good pick, waiver pickup, $10 million. This is how big teams should use their money, is for get quality guys on short-term deals for money like that. But he's been hurt, but we've seen Smyly come back and be all right. And if Drew and teams are looking for starters, even Drew Smyly's level, I think Drew Smyly won a game in the World Series last year. Not dealing Smyly or Mychal Givens, to me, you're not going to get back what you would get from dealing an Ian Happ or a Willson Contreras, but not dealing either of those guys is just like, it would be malpractice. The only reason you have these guys is to flip them.
Oh, interesting. The Yankees just traded Jordan Montgomery to the Cardinals?
Okay, so the Cardinals, who also got Jose Quintana, Ken Schultz's best friend, also went over there. Who Quintana's having a great year, and I fully expect him to get his, as I think it was Ron Darling said, his tits lit up. Was either Darling or Keith Hernandez in the playoffs when he gets there. But Jordan Montgomery, that is a weird one, and I know the Yankees just got Frankie Montas in the rotation, but
correct.
But that is a weird one. Montgomery's a good starter, and it's weird to see starters going in between playoff teams in that way, or in the Cardinals' case, hopeful
right.
playoff team, I
And
guess.
and just on a personal note, I have Montgomery on my fantasy team, and I'm afraid I'm going to have to drop him. I have a strict no Cardinals policy on my fantasy team, and as a GM myself, this does create kind of an issue for me.
Well, yeah, and I understand in your fantasy league you could have had Juan Soto, but you refused to include Dylan Carlson. Is that correct?
It's true. Yeah, that was a non-starter for me. Much like I would assume the Cubs would not have given up Albert Almora to get a Juan Soto. So kind of a similar. Oh, okay. The Mets got Mychal Givens. That just happened.
Okay, all right. So what do we know what they're getting back yet? Are you seeing that?
I literally just see a tweet from a verified account that said Mets get Givens.
Andy Martino. It is funny at the deadline at this moment where guys are just like the gif of the cat trying to type, just like slapping at the keyboard, just trying to get out first with fragments of sentences. Or if you're John Heyman, just absolutely false teams. As you saw, the best move of the trade deadline for the Cubs was extending Musgrove for 5 years. Heyman originally tweeted Cubs Musgrove stays home with the Cubs 5 years, 100 million. So we're doing great fictionally, at least. So
yeah. Well, I mean, I guess the key for all these people is being first to report it. So I understand it. At this point, I'm just trying to make sure that I'm looking at people with blue check marks, because you just can't. You can only trust Mike Hawk so much when.
Yeah, Katy Perry's booty hole has been just shockingly quiet lately. So that could be good or bad.
I was going to say, at the risk of discussing something that's going to be irrelevant less than 5 minutes from now, in the scenario where the Cubs do in fact keep Happ and Contreras, do you think it ultimately will have just come down to them not getting enough of an offer to make it worth trading them? Like, what is it, just because the Soto deal shook everything up so much that the Cubs' best trade partner in the Padres just no longer were a trade partner with too little time left?
Definitely seems like the Padres were who the Cubs were hoping would be their trade partner here. But that being said, I mean, how much did we hear about the trading for Eric Hosmer to get a prospect deal, right? Apparently Jed Hoyer had been working on that bit of business for a year and a half, couldn't get it done, and Hosmer blocked the trade to Washington and is now in Boston. So it is not encouraging to me that they had been engaged for this long and couldn't even get like that element of the deal done. But yeah, I do think, and I was hopeful coming into the deadline. We're seeing is Ken Schultz breaking news. Harrison Bader from St. Louis going back to the Yankees in this deal.
In the Montgomery deal, yeah.
That is kind of surprising. Okay.
Yeah, it definitely is.
So Bader's been out a little bit. That's getting the Gallo also went from the Yankees to the Dodgers today. So some movement shaking around there, and it looks like the Yankees are in on Lopez from Miami, which would be interesting if that's another reason why Montgomery was headed out. But yeah, I think honestly, and again, there's probably another 10-15 minutes to go before we actually hear what happened at this deadline. But the deadline is in 1 minute, folks. The deadline is up in 1 minute. So if Willson and Happ are not dealt, I would hope that the returns outside of the Padres just simply weren't good enough, and that now this is calling an audible a little bit, and like I said, using the rest of this godforsaken useless baseball season to possibly work on extensions when you have unique negotiating access, if not ability, to players like this. So
now we'll see if that ends up having been the case. But if it is, do you think the Cubs are going to be even further behind the 8 ball now because of more or less what they put Contreras and Happ through over the past few weeks?
I don't think so. I mean, because I think we saw how Willson Contreras reacted when the Cubs just were trying to take him to arbitration, which seemed absolutely unnecessarily antagonistic. And then eventually, and even in the moment when at the beginning of the season, Willson was like, I think it would have been fine if the offseason was longer. He seemed to be very mature about it. And then they did end up coming to a deal at the buzzer. So I honestly think what I do think has to happen is if no Contreras deal was made, you need Hoyer to go down and talk to him immediately and to tell him what the thoughts are going forward. And you have to be genuine. And that's a thing that I have confidence that it would have been the case in Theo Epstein times. But you have to go down and be like, this has been a fucked up scenario for a while. We know that. We're going to be here through the end of the year. Let's talk.
Right.
But how much confidence do you have that that's going to be the case?
I don't know. It feels a little bit like you're going through like marital issues and you're like about to get a divorce and then you don't. And it's like, well, let's just go back to acting like things are normal. It's like, it's going to feel kind of weird. So breaking news, the Royals apparently have traded Whit Merrifield.
Is it not to us, the Brian Roberts, the next generation Brian Roberts of 1 million rumors
of Toronto? I'll tell you that.
Okay, yeah, that is a good point. He's off the table for vaccinated Toronto. Yep.
It doesn't even say where it's.
No, I'm seeing Mark Feinsand is also saying they've traded Whit Merrifield. We got Syndergaard it looks like Carlos Rodon. I'm not seeing anything on. He was another name at the end here,
Pablo
right?
Lopez also is not being
staying home. Sort of deadline at the buzzer here, if that's the case, because I mean, the day began with the Juan Soto deal, who is, I mean, obviously he's you look at any projection, anything of what he's done up to his age 23 year, and it's just like, I don't know, is he worst case Mickey Mantle so far? It seems like
he is on pace to be one of the best players to ever play baseball. I'll tell you what, let's do this.
Go.
So I have a whole list up of every trade that has happened of any significance. I'm gonna start rattling them off. Feel free to interrupt me at any point if you see breaking news of something that is just.
Let me interrupt you right before you start. Ken Schultz saying in the comments, here is where I am right now. I'm trying to thread a very tricky needle, rooting for the Cubs to win and Jed to fail. Retaining Contreras and Happ would be my ideal. I'm exactly there too. Obviously, Merrifield Ken for real? Merrifield to Toronto? Merrifield to Toronto via Passan? That is, I mean, he has to get vaccinated then, right? That is hilarious that it is literally the opposite of you said a joke that made logical sense, and now Ken via Passan is breaking. I mean, that's fucking great.
But is it like Benintendi, where like for some reason they just didn't want to be vaccinated if they lived in Kansas City, but then if they moved, they're fine to get vaccinated?
As Americans, do we need to trade everyone to Toronto to just to beat this fucking disease? That is incredible. That's great. That's my favorite thing of the trade deadline so far. And I will also say, I am currently drinking from my Cubs mug. I'm drinking fake. Where is it? Kirkland brand whiskey. This is a hard liquor deadline, folks, and it is which we believe is Crown Royal. We believe got that from an old Costco.
Yeah.
So
well, it's kind of like how the Cubs are like the Cubs, but from Wish.com.
Yeah, the current ones, yes. So anyway, Adam, give me the rundown, and I will keep an eye on the Twitter.
Please do. So for the first move, which jumped the entire kind of trade deadline market, as everybody knows, the Yankees got Andrew Benintendi. The Royals got some pitching. They got 2 right-handed pitchers and a left-handed pitcher. I don't know if they're relievers or not. Then the Mariners put together a pretty impressive package from the Reds' perspective to get Luis Castillo. He will be making his first start against the Yankees tomorrow.
A huge package going back to Cincinnati. Cincinnati is really stocked up prospect wise as far as teams that are going in at the deadline getting prospects. I don't know. I'm not sure any team's really done better than Cincinnati, I guess, except for Washington, but it's hard to count that when you give away baby Ted Williams. So go ahead.
The Rays got outfielder David Peralta in exchange for a catcher. I assume a catching prospect who went to the Diamondbacks. As we know, the Yankees got Scott Effross. Then the Padres, in a very surprising move, got Josh Hader. The Brewers in exchange got Taylor Rogers, left-handed pitcher, Dylan Lamet, who we've seen a bit pitch against the Cubs when he was on the Padres. Outfielder Esteury Ruiz and left-handed pitcher Robert Gasser. Now, the Brewers, and we'll get to this in a little bit, they have also acquired some other relievers, including most recently Trevor Rosenthal, not to be confused with Ken Rosenthal, who I don't believe can pitch.
Way less of an asshole and much smaller.
Right. But, height doesn't measure hearts. And what we saw earlier was that Devin Williams, I don't know how the rest of the Brewers feel, but he did not seem happy about it, despite the fact that he's now going to presumably take over that closer role. Was not pleased with the Brewers trading Josh Hader.
Yeah, I guess Devin Williams wants to win, and we hate Josh Hader here as a podcast. We're one of those people who doesn't think every high schooler goes through a white power phase, I guess. But he's been a dominant closer outside of 2 games this year, basically, and I definitely get Brewers fans being mad about that because they're in first place and the Brewers have no real offense, and the main way they can get to the championship is riding a couple of elite starters and a couple of elite back of the bullpen guys. Now Rogers, who they traded for the back of the bullpen, his FIP is way better than his ERA, so I don't know if a very, very smart baseball guy, David Stearns, who runs things over in Milwaukee, I don't know if he's they're seeing something there, but Dinelson Lamet obviously is a high ceiling guy too. So I understand what the Brewers are doing, getting a little worse now to be a little better for the next few years, but also I understand Devin Williams too. Rosenthal coming through saying not trading Willson Contreras and Ian Happ. Okay. I mean, now what? I you know what I'm most excited about beyond because I still expect everything that I don't want to happen. I'm excited for Wilson's first at bat back at Wrigley.
God. Oh my God. For that, and I'm very excited for this next episode of the Compound Podcast.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. Ian Happ's going to have a lot to say. So damn happy for Sarah Sanchez. Yes, our Bleed Cubby Blue friend, big Willson Contreras fan. Willson Contreras is my brother Joe's favorite player. Very interesting. Not trading Contreras and Happ, which to me is the right move, depending.
You and I have said so many times, especially in the past month, that we completely understand why you would trade Robertson, why you should have probably traded Smiley
Yeah, I don't know why
Ian in
Smiley's still
2020.
here. Yeah.
You could have. I don't know, maybe starting him in San Francisco wasn't a good idea. But all that aside, we also said like some of these things make sense and some of them don't, including trading Contreras and Happ, especially Contreras. I would have understood trading Happ more because of how, I mean, objectively, his value has never been higher than it is right now.
Mm-hmm.
So from that standpoint, I do get it, or I would have gotten it if they had traded him. Contreras, I never understood why they wouldn't have already extended him, and I pray that they try to work something out. But this is, I mean, it went from me. I always knew that Contreras might get traded from the beginning. From opening day, we knew that might happen.
Right.
The Hap thing kind of crept up on us, where even as recently as like 2-3 weeks ago, it didn't seem like they would, and then there seemed like it was all this momentum and almost an assumption that they definitely would, and now we're back to them not doing so. And God, I feel I was fully expecting us to be recording this in real time, being very upset and reminiscing about all the good times with Happen, especially with Contreras. We don't have to do that anymore, and this is maybe, from my standpoint, some of the first good Cubs news there's been in years.
I'm so hesitant to go in such a positive way as I feel right now, because this could be this could be a turning point. I think this could be a turning point where you decide, okay, we couldn't get the things that we wanted to get. Go ahead. Did you have something? Did you just see
I'm
something?
just laughing because I just saw a tweet that said this hug is super awkward now, and it just showed the like 10-second hug between them.
Happ and Contreras should do the extra long tearful hug first game back as well. Hello, welcome to see you again. So yeah, this should be good, because this should be a turning point where you say, okay, there's a way we could have gone where we would have gotten high end prospect types, whatever, hopefully close to the majors, etc. They did not get that. They could not get that. In which case, I would give Jed credit for not like crumbling at the last moment and just taking the best offer, because I was worried he would do that with the Mets. And the Mets have a farm system where they basically have two guys at the very top, Francisco Alvarez and Brett Baty. And then after that, it's like a big drop down and then another big drop down. And if you couldn't get anyone at the very top and they were one of the main suitors, I didn't want to settle.
Right.
If the turn now is okay, we're calling an audible. We're not settling. We have these guys. We have this exclusive negotiating window with Willson Contreras. Why don't we try talking about that for the next couple of years? Ian Happ's under contract anyway next year. We can talk to him later. This could be a turning point where you get closer to contending in 2023 by not making the deals you wanted to make.
Right, because it was almost like, I don't know how you felt, but to me, trading Happen Contreras would have been punting on 2023 hands down. Unless you're going to make unless you are going to spend all the money that you could possibly spend on free agents in the offseason. And even if you did, I just couldn't see a path towards even claiming that you were trying to be competitive in 2023.
Right.
That now changes. And it has changed in a very weird way, where it's like, you and I both remember that feeling of going into 2015 when it was like, oh wait, we have Joe Madden managing us now, and wait a second, John Lester signed. You're starting to change the clock in terms of when you think they could conceivably compete. And I'm not saying that because they've done this that it means that Contreras will even be there next year, but it's certainly I think him staying gives the Cubs a better chance of re-signing him than some sort of Chapman situation where they trade him and then try to re-sign him after trading him. I don't think that would have happened.
No, I don't either. And if you're fantasy booking this, if you're doing it like you would playing a video game, what you would do is you would trade Willson Contreras at this deadline. And you would then just ask him, what do you want to come back to the place you've liked the best? And you would just sign him because you have all this money. Well, you do have all this money. You're the Chicago Cubs, you're a top 5 market, et cetera, et cetera. More than a top 5 market, top 5 money making team, et cetera. So you would just do that. But now, I mean, Anthony Rizzo last year at the trade deadline told Jed, I want to go down with the ship. He did not want to be dealt. He wanted to go to the end of the contract, and you could have talked to him at the end and whatever. You now have an opportunity to do that with Willson and then to talk about the future. And Wilson's 30 years old. He's shown how much DHing can help him, how much it can help keep him fresh, and you still have a very good catcher right there. It's tough. It sucks to to feel excited, but not want to get caught being excited a little bit, because they could still do the thing where they're like, okay, we'll just take our draft pick after competitive balance round B between picks 75 and 80. Or not even offer him that and then just get nothing. That could happen. But this is a chance, Jed Hoyer. Step the fuck up, Jed Hoyer. Get up, say, we're now talking to Willson and Contreras. We have the heart and soul of this team. It's the best catcher in baseball. The Chicago Cubs should not be punting, going on 2.5 years if we're punting on next year too. Mm-hmm. Spend the money in the offseason, build this team up, and build it starting behind the plate with this guy. This is a chance to do it. Come out and be forthright and truthful for the first time in your fucking life with this team in a way where you say, yeah, we looked into things. It's not going to happen. We have a great advantage now. We can talk to this guy and go forward. So I would love for this. I would love for that to happen. I can't wait to see it. And I just really hope. Do we have a direct line to Jed Hoyer's office right now? What's happening? I can't wait for him to swerve this enthusiasm around to disappointment almost immediately. But for this moment, I'm feeling a little hopeful, Adam. And I was talking about quitting this podcast 2 weeks ago, and honestly, off mic minutes ago. So the fact that I now don't necessarily feel like that, I think is big.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I'm still. Who knew that that at least from our perspective as Cubs fans, Whit Merrifield being traded to Toronto wasn't the most surprising thing that happened.
Yeah, and then MLB wide sort of scenario. Willson Contreras, by the way, who was doing ads, I believe, also in Spanish for vaccinations. So, yeah. And a big, people know about Willson Contreras. Whatever. Also does a ton for the Special Olympics. He's an amazing man and an amazing baseball player. I think good to have around. The Atlanta Braves are acquiring Raisel Iglesias from the Angels for Jesse Chavez. Sorry, Jesse. God dang, Jesse is just.
I read an article that said he's the most traded player in baseball.
Trader, big trader vibes. Michael Fulmer to the Twins. Okay.
Yeah, that dropped, I think, maybe 15 minutes before the deadline.
Okay.
So hectic that I didn't even get to mention it.
Phillies DFA'd Juris Familia and Odubel Herrera DFA'd. Okay. Tough day for domestic abusers.
Yeah, speaking of bad people, I like how the Brewers traded away a bad person in Josh Hader and then traded for a worse person in Matt Bush.
Bush has had some troubles, automobile wise, I believe, right?
Oh yeah, I believe it's both domestic abuse and drunk driving that critically injured someone.
Not ideal.
I believe he spent some time in jail for that.
Text Russell Dorsey. So you guys listening might remember Russell Dorsey from, I think, was he writing with the Sun-Times? I want to say mostly last year, but he works with Bally Sports and Stadium now. But he just said, text from industry source, WTF are the Cubs doing? Great question. I would say WTF are the Cubs doing, but without hate, with curiosity. Yeah. WTF are the Cubs doing? I'm very curious what TF they're doing.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Is we, unfortunately, I'm sure we're going to see this in the next couple days or couple hours. There will definitely be a segment of Cubs fans and Cubs Twitter who are pissed about this. What the hell are we doing? We could have been stockpiling more prospects.
For a future that never comes. Yeah. And listeners know I love prospects, love them. But let me tell you, our favorite prospect fella, the one we go back the farthest with, Brian Smith at Cub Prospects. He just posted, Mr. Prospect, his business is prospects, posted. There will be no whining and no hand-wringing by this account that Contreras and Happ stay Cubs, just a directive and plea, build me a 2023 winner. Fuck yeah, Cub prospects. The prospect guy knows. It's time to play Major League Baseball. How about that? Should start now. It's what it's time to do. Extend Contreras. Move in. You have to sign a top of the rotation type pitcher going into next year. You have to start dealing from this now impressive prospect depth for the same thing, a top of the rotation guy. We need another big bat as well. Sign one of the many shortstops that are available in this offseason. And now, Adam, you're getting close to being a contending Major League Baseball in baseball's worst fucking division.
Let me tell you what the Cubs are going to do, all right? In my dream world. The Cubs this offseason, they're going to shell out the big bucks for Carlos Correa. They're also going to shell out some money after Carlos Rodon opts out, which he definitely will.
Sign every Carlos Lee, how you doing? Carlos Quinton.
And then the Cubs are going to reverse engineer a Yu Darvish trade, but not to get that Japanese player. They are going to ship off the whole fucking farm and get Shohei Ohtani in a Cubs uniform, and now we're talking.
That would be quite a bit of talk. That would be, yeah.
They might trade him this offseason. I mean...
Well, they were, credibly, they were looking into trading Shohei Ohtani this offseason. Not this offseason, this past week.
The White Sox apparently had an offer out, and then Tony La Russa fell asleep in the middle of it.
It's a tough break. He wasn't behind the wheel on this one. I mean, the things you're saying are things that largely could happen. I mean, in terms of
the thing is a little out there, but I mean, well. Possible.
Signing a Correa and a Rodon is, basically exactly what you should do. Whether your preference is a Correa or a Bogarts or a Trey Turner, get one of those. Yep. Just pick the one you believe in most. You get that. Rodon, great example. Rodon is a game one playoff starter type. He shoves. He's good on Twitter. He seems cool. His wife's fun on Twitter. Ashley's a good follow as well. That would make a ton of sense. Extend Willson Contreras, and obviously, I just, Angels, tell me what you think it gets to get Ohtani, and I probably say you just say yes to that, but yes, that's pie in the sky maybe. But the Cubs were one of the couple I think the Cubs and the Dodgers were the only National League teams that Ohtani had in his finalist group. So I
believe so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm kind of like you, where no matter what, I'm grateful that we get to have more time to watch Happ and Contreras. As we've talked about before, my ability to continue watching this team, had they traded those two guys, would have been greatly diminished. The fact that I get to see them in person again when I'm in Cincinnati in a couple of weeks, that the Field of Dreams game will not completely be a AAA game. Maybe I'll make a sign when I'm in Cincinnati to say that I'm glad that Willson and Happ are still there. I'm very happy about it. I just don't want this to just be prolonging saying goodbye to Willson 2 months from now, but I don't know. I'm still happy about it.
No, I'm doing a quick Twitter scroll while we're talking, and it's just, people saying, okay, so they have to extend him, and you would think, wouldn't you?
Mm-hmm. There's also the opportunity for Jed to try to make this into like a good PR thing, where he's like, you know what, the kind of emotion that we saw from Ian and Willson over that past week leading up to the trade deadline, when it came down to it, we didn't feel like we got the value that is commensurate with what they bring to the club, both on the field and off the field. And these are guys that we want to be foundational pieces for the next Cubs championship team. Mm-hmm. How about that? How about that for a statement?
How about that? I feel like we need to, it's so confusing in so many ways that we need to get the story from the source a little bit. We have to, like, Jed has to speak, and we know how good and clear he is about doing that whenever he comes out. I super forgot what a rebuild was. I don't know. I've never known, so I didn't know what to do. I guess, I'll tell you what, it makes me interested to see whatever the next thing is, to see whatever they say, what's the angle here.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the irony of it, right? We've all bemoaned the fact that Hoyer wouldn't even admit it was a rebuild and kept saying, no, we're retooling. What they're doing right now kind of feels like retooling. Like
This
you're
would be.
trading the people that you should definitely trade, and you're not trading the people that you don't need to, and then perhaps you can make something of this group that we have right here. Because um, I think even in a perfect scenario where everyone was healthy, which is not how baseball works, the Cubs would still not have been a good team this year. But I do think it's
No.
possible that they could have been like the Orioles and been a team that was like 500 around this time had they not had the injuries that they had and lost as many close games as they had. So what I'm saying is they didn't do nothing last offseason, right? They did sign Marcus Stroman, they did sign Seiya Suzuki, which are things we were both happy about at the time.
Sure.
So yeah, so if you do keep Contreras and Happ, and if perhaps some of these pieces that you got in exchange for the trades you made in Effross and Robertson and Givens are able to either have some sort of big league impact sooner than later or be turned into another big league player, then I think you're getting closer to being able to spend enough money to at least be at least have us believe you when you say you're trying to compete next year.
If you don't deal with Willson Contreras, you don't extend him, and you don't compete for the division next year, fucking, cue that. I need to get Ken Schultz on the soundboard, fire Jed, sell the team. Because as Greg Huss, another great prospect writer, just tweeted, if the Cubs don't use the rest of this year and work out an extension with Willson Contreras, this deadline will go down as the biggest post-World Series mistake by the front office by a long shot. Wouldn't even compare to anything that's been done in the last couple of years. And yeah, I mean, like, we hated the fact that they made all the trades last year. They chose no one to build around. Maybe they've accidentally backed themselves into a good corner here where you have some quality to build around now. I hope. And I didn't think this would be my big mood at this point of the trade deadline where I'm scrambling to find who did we get for Mychal Givens,
All I saw was low level prospect.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense, especially like coming in at the buzzer like that. In which case, like, good get by the Mets, because that's a very effective reliever to have for the playoffs if they didn't have to give up basically anything.
Yeah, and the Mets kind of didn't make that big of a splash. I mean, the pieces they added were fairly small. I mean, they added Vogelbach, they added Ruff, who we just saw on the Giants, who will DH sort of situation. They added Tyler Naquin. They added I feel like there's maybe a starting pitcher they added, but like nothing super.
Jacob deGrom. Yeah, I guess from who also will be a free agent, by the way, as far as top of the rotation guys go, because he still plans to opt out. Yeah, and like Ken said, Giants held on to Rodon and Jock. Rangers held on to Matt Moore. A lot of holding on at the end here after so much action early. So I don't know. I feel like we've basically covered it, right? Like,
yeah,
I don't know what else.
I want to see. We've seen so many press conferences where someone holds a jersey up. Is there going to be a press conference in Toronto where someone holds a needle up for Whit Merrifield? I mean, how's that going to work?
Yeah, where they hold up the new Merrifield jersey, and then they just, oh, sorry, and there was a little guy in there, a little J&J probably, get him a one shot.
Well, I tell you what, this is not how I expected this to go.
No, same. But we got to experience it live together. We'll get this podcast posted audio-wise.
And Ken Schultz is off to the juice box at Minute Maid Park.
That's fun. So he's going to go see Minute Maid. That's just Houston. That's Houston, right? Yeah. Okay. Cool.
He'll go see Vasquez in a different
uniform. Yeah. New catcher Vasquez.
That was. We didn't even get to that trade, but yeah, that was tough. He basically found out he had been traded in real time when he was already being interviewed about other things. And then 30 reporters ran up around him and was like, how do you feel about being traded to the Astros?
Pretty weird, dog. Not as sad as the Joey Gallo Q&A that you posted. But anyway.
Oof. Yeah, that was a rough
one. But he's in LA now. Hopefully he has a better time. Closer to his home in Vegas, as we know, from the best Little League team ever.
So much less pressure playing for a low-profile team like the Dodgers.
Yeah, exactly. It's nice for him to get to pull back on the reins a little bit. But hey, guys, thanks for joining us on our sort of wacky, unexpected trade deadline special and in YouTube Live scenario. And yeah, follow us at Away Games Pod on your Twitters and your Instagram.
Follow Sex and the City. It's
Sex and the City. Thank you to my Sex and the City podcast for providing us the live ability that the Away Games podcast, YouTube was not ready to let Away Games go live. So we had to call an audible at the end, much like Hoyer.
Arguably, YouTube made the right call.
Yeah, possibly. So yeah, thanks for listening, everybody. We appreciate it, and we will catch you soon. I'm sure maybe we'll have another podcast quick, depending on what Hoyer comes out and says. But hey, welcome back, Willson and Ian.